Welcome to this second in a series of videos on the Nameauth package. I'll be talking about some basic naming features. The macro that you will use most is name. It has an optional first argument, a mandatory second argument, and an optional third argument. It has a starred form to cause a full reference to a name. And finally, if for whatever reason you do not use this optional final argument, you may have to put an open-close brace pair after the macro to prevent text and brackets from being pulled in subsequently as if it were that final argument. There are some cases in which you want that to happen, and some cases in which you do not want to, definitely do not want to put a pair of braces following the macro, and we'll discuss that later. This pattern of naming is the heart and soul of how the Nameauth package works. The way it works is pretty simple, even though it kind of looks like this whole table of stuff here. arg1 stands for a forename, specifically a Western style name, so if the forename is there, it's a Western style name. Now you can make it an Eastern style name by reverse ordering the names using the reverse macros, as we talked about last time. However, even so, it will appear as a Western style name in the index. arg2 is always required, and it's either the surnames or a mononym if nothing is present in arg1, or an Eastern style surname. Moreover, if there is nothing here in this first argument, if you use a comma delimited pair, this is thought of as an affix, and this as a forename if you're using either a mononym or Eastern style name, and they will appear somewhat differently than Western style names in the index. Finally, if there are forenames present, and if you have something in this field, in this arg3 field, the final argument will be swapped with the forenames in the body text, but not in the index. And this allows for certain types of flexibility, like there are certain instances in which you want to use alternate forenames, not only as nicknames, but also, for example, if you wanted to just use initials for referring to people in the index and wanted to use fuller names in the body text. So that's basically how the encoding of names works in the Nameauth package. Now, I tried to, well, here it's all explained for you too. I tried to make that a little bit simpler in some recent versions of the package. The Nameauth environment sets up synonyms for name, name star, and fname. What you do is you set up this Nameauth environment. Each line has a command that starts off with a control sequence open angle bracket. It has a field for an abbreviation, like a shorthand, and this is required. Then it has 3 other arguments, and they're all required, and they are the same arguments you would use for these macros up here. There are 4 arguments that are required per line, therefore you will need 3 ampersands per line, and each line terminates with a closed angle bracket. So if you have this abbreviation wash, there'll also be an L form created, L wash, and that will have the meaning of name star, and then S wash will also be created, and that will have the meaning of fname. So here is an example of a name authority, and when used, these shorthand macros come out like this. Now that's kind of interesting, and you know, it might be helpful, but I thought it would be better to show these macros in action, and that's what we'll be doing for the subsequent videos. We'll be using this program called Gummi. And Gummi gives us immediate feedback. For example, we have these long forms of the macros: name, name star, and fname. They deal with automated syntax and formats, so that you see the first reference to George Washington has a different format, otherwise it has just a shorter version and no formatting. And we also have other forms, that the starred form that will give you the full reference again, and then the fname form gives you George. Remember that we can change that behavior with the package options. For example, if we said always format, then every instance of a name is formatted, and we can change the formatting, such as italic. But we're not really interested in messing about too much with the various package options. Rather, we want to focus on why these naming macros can help you, and we'll show you this real quick. Automated edits. Let's take this text here, and let's assume it's your dissertation and your advisor tells you to move this text up to here. The subsequent reference automatically becomes a first reference. The old first reference automatically becomes a subsequent reference. And that's helpful because then what it says is you can move pieces of text around without having to do a bunch of global searches and possible replaces in order to fix the names if you have to move things around. Yeah, of course, in a perfect world, we'd all like to write the manuscript on the first go. But if you can't, Nameauth tries to lessen the amount of work you might have to do. In the same manner, if you accidentally refer to somebody by first name and you don't really want to do that, Nameauth has this little feature where it does not do the first name the first time. See how that reference to George became George Washington, but if I undo that, it goes back to George. So syntactically it kind of helps protect you. Then there's reusability. I have two exactly the same lists of names. Here's the presidents here, and here's them again down there. Exactly the same text, just one difference. Here I have this reverse comma active macro, and you see the format of the names has changed, giving me this list of names in reverse order. And that shows how some of these macros try to implement ways in which you can grab text from one context and put it in a different one without necessarily having to retype all the names that you've used, thus saving you work. By the way, you see all these different name forms in the body text. Well, if we go down to the index, we see that the index entries are all consistent. John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and George Washington all have the same index entry forms, even though there are variant forms in the body text. So basically, you get the indexing and the naming all happening together. You get names varying in the body text, but being consistent in the index. In other words, the package is taking a lot of busy work out of the hands of the author. And especially with this Nameauth environment, as long as you're using these shorthand macros consistently, it's going to work pretty well. In the next video, we're going to start dealing with the short forms of the names and how to work with them and some other naming features as well. Thanks for watching.